Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so excited to be here. Appreciate you all coming out early on a Friday. Hope the coffee's working. I'll try not to put you back to sleep. Can't promise that, though. So yeah, a little bit about me. My name's Gavin. I'm a full-time cartoonist. I've got this website, Zen Pencils, and the whole idea is I take inspirational quotes and poems, and I turn them into comics. And yeah, the site's been up now for 6 years. It's actually the 6th birthday this month, and it's been a pretty eventful 6 years, and I'll tell you a bit about that today. And yeah, before I was a cartoonist, I worked as a graphic designer, and so I'll talk a bit about how I kind of transitioned from like a job I was not that happy in into doing something that I really love now. And yeah, so this month's theme is curiosity, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to incorporate that theme, to be honest. I was panicking and I was nervous, and I was thinking, and it's obvious that we should all be like curious. I think that goes without saying, to be curious about the world, and to always question things, and to question things going on in our society and in our culture and politics. So, it's always good to maintain that childlike sense of wonder, I think. I don't need to remind you of that. But, I was thinking, how often are we curious about our own lives, about our work life, about our jobs and our careers? And that's when I kind of remembered that when I was kind of going through my career change, I was kind of asking myself a lot of questions, a lot of the tough questions that we should all ask ourselves. And one of the big ones was, am I good enough? I'd always dreamt of being a cartoonist, but I never thought I was good enough. So yeah, that was a big question. How would it affect my life if I actually took a risk and tried to pursue something that I wanted to do? How would it affect my life? How would it affect my financial situation? But yeah, there are two big questions that I asked myself that really helped me, and I think they can help you too. But before I go into that, I'll just tell you a bit about my previous life as a designer. And before I go any further, I've got nothing against graphic designers. I'm sure there are a lot of you here today. It's a very noble profession, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it was never really my passion. I'm glad I have that background because it does help me now with my comics. But it was never really my passion growing up. I kind of showed a bit of artistic talent, I guess, growing up, but I grew up in Perth, and Perth is not really a hotbed of cartooning industry, and Australia in general, and I just never thought it was like a realistic option to be a cartoonist. And my parents, they didn't really support it either. They migrated to Australia before I was born, and typical Asian parents, you got to go to uni, you got to get a real job, and stop wasting time with this cartooning crap, because you'll never make any money, and just forget about it. And I was a pretty obedient kid, so I did what I was told. I went to uni, I did design in WA, and I was lucky enough to get a job straight out of uni, and I worked in the newspaper industry and like magazine publishing, a bit of that as well. And yeah, I kind of did that for a few years. Moved over to Melbourne, also in the same large corporation. And yeah, after quite a few years of doing this, I just would kind of hit the wall, and I would kind of go to work, and I could feel my soul slowly dying inside, and my brain cells dying too. And yeah, that's when I kind of asked myself like the first question, which I think you should ask, and that is this what I'm meant to be doing with my life? And so I was curious about that. And I know it sounds simple, but when was the last time you asked yourself that? And so as I kind of like gazed into my drooling reflection in the monitor, I realized that no, it's not what I was meant to be doing. What I'd always wanted to do was be a cartoonist, and that's always been my passion growing up. I was always that kid who like scribbled and drawed and read comics and watched cartoons. I still am. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to actually have a shot at it and actually try and, give it a go. And I know, that's a pretty, that question, is this what I'm meant to be doing with my life? I know it's a bit of a privileged question that we are lucky enough to ask ourselves, living in a lucky country like Australia. But yeah, I was pretty young. I didn't have any kids or anything, and yeah, there was no reason why I couldn't have been pushing myself a bit harder. So that was the first question, and around this time that I was kind of contemplating getting out of my old job, I was like reading a lot of these life hacking blogs and stuff like that. And there was this one by Chris Guillebeau. He's more of a podcaster now. He's got this podcast called Side Hustle School, which you might enjoy. But yeah, I'm totally stealing the next question from him. And yeah, he kind of recommended you ask yourself, how can I use my creativity to help others? And I know that sounds a bit grandiose, but I wasn't kind of thinking, how can I change the world with comics or whatever? I was just kind of thinking, I was looking at what was out there with webcomics, and there were the typical, superhero or like gag comics. There wasn't really any kind of uplifting or positive comics online. So I thought, maybe I could do something along those lines. And that's when the whole idea came to me to actually build a whole website around inspirational quotes. And I know a lot of you probably like inspirational quotes, and I know a lot of you probably hate inspirational quotes. I know there's a fine line of it being completely lame, and I know that, trust me. I know a lot of you see it being posted by your crazy auntie on Facebook and stuff like that. But yeah, around that time, I was kind of reading a lot of like biographies and stuff, and I kind of had saved a few of my favorite quotes from my heroes that was kind of motivating me to leave my job. So I'd saved some of those, and I also noticed online that a lot of people were sharing them, as I'm sure that you've noticed too. But back in say like 7 years ago, they kind of looked like this. They looked really crap, and no one was really putting any thought into them. They'll just get a random stock image and just put some horrible font over the top of it. It's a bit better now because you've got apps that can do it for you and stuff like that. But yeah, so I was like, why don't I actually, instead of it looking like that, why don't I actually use my illustration and cartooning to maybe turn it into something cool that you might want to hang on your wall, or that you might like buy as a gift for a friend. And instead of seeing just a famous person's face and the quote slapped on top, maybe I could turn it into something fun that kids might like, or that teachers might like. Turns out Einstein didn't say that. That's been misattributed to him. But yeah, I'm a lot more thorough in my research now. But yeah, not only posters. I really wanted to actually make comics, and I thought I could use the quotes as like basis of a story of a comic. And I don't want you to read the whole thing. But this is just an example of an early comic where I can actually turn the quotes into an original story that I thought of. And around this time, this is an early comic, so it's all about leaving your job and telling your boss to go suck it, so that's what was on my mind at the time. Yeah, just give me a sec. Yeah, so that was the whole concept of Zen pencils. And yeah, I was pretty confident in it, I guess, like stupidly confident. And actually, I just quit my job, and I had a few months of of severance pay. And so I just spent that time, I didn't know any web design, so I taught myself web design. I built the website. I built up an archive of comics to get ready for launch. And yeah, it launched in February 2012. And yeah, it's been pretty interesting 6 years since. And yeah, now there are over 200 comics on the website, and I make a living from the website. I sell posters and merchandise through an online store, and I'm lucky enough to have a few books published as well of the comics. And yeah, so I managed to kind of get by. And so yeah, it's been a big change for me, and I know it's what I'm meant to be doing. And regarding the second question, you know, how has it helped people? So initially I just thought, you know, just like I said, it was just something positive on the internet because there was so much negativity out there. So I thought it just might cheer people up. They might buy a poster, they might share it on their social media, and that was it. That's all I hoped for. But as I'll show you now, that it's kind of exceeded all my wildest expectations. It's really kind of taken on a life of its own. So I'm just going to share with you a few examples of how the comics have actually, crazily enough, helped people. So the first one I'll talk about is Ithaca. Is this comic I did about an adaptation of a poem, and the poem's like an old Greek poem. It's like over 100 years old. It's pretty obscure. I don't know if you would have heard of it before, but just a reader sent me the poem and said, you know, maybe you'd like to adapt this. And I read it, and I was like, yeah, it's cool. That's a pretty cool poem. I'll turn it into a comic. And the poem's all about like traveling and kind of seeing the world, and the whole theme is like the journey is more important than the destination. So that was the comic. I just did it just like a normal comic. I posted it, and I went about my business. And yeah, a few months later, I can get this email from a guy, and his name is Ameya, and he's in Mumbai in India. And he wrote me an email, and he said, "Oh, Gavin, that Ithaca comic really changed my life." And I was like, okay, well, how the hell did that happen? Yeah, so he was in a similar situation to me, where he went to uni and did engineering, and he was working as an engineer, and he hated it. And yeah, he kind of read this comic, and he decided to just quit his job and to go traveling. And he just went traveling, backpacking around Asia, and he loved it so much that when he got back to India, he started his own travel business. And the business is just about helping like local Indians plan like a perfect holiday. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. And you know, I just kind of, this was years ago when he emailed me this, and so I emailed him this week just to check in on him, to make sure he hadn't ruined his life. And but thankfully, he's still working full-time with the company. And he's got a business partner, and they actually employ 19 people now. And yeah, he doesn't regret it for a second. He said it's been really tough, a lot of hard work, a lot of ups and downs, but he's really glad he made that decision. And yeah, the name of his company is Ithaca. So yeah, I thought that was a nice little story. And again, I kind of get feedback like that quite often, actually, and it's just been really mind-blowing. And just another comic I want to talk about is this one I did about love. And it's not the full comic, this is just a small section of it. So yeah, this quote was sent to me by a reader again, by C.S. Lewis. And it's all about that kind of having to be vulnerable in order to find love. And it's about this girl who gets her heart broken, and she kind of locks it away in a chest and doesn't really share it with the world. And the quote's all about having to actually, you have to let it out of the chest and be vulnerable. And she meets another guy, and they kind of, you know, live happily ever after. And yeah, again, it was just a regular comic. I posted it and didn't expect anything different from all my other comics. And yeah, just kind of quickly spread around the internet. And I still get feedback from it about it today. And so yeah, a few examples of how people have kind of enjoyed the comic is it's kind of been used for wedding shoots now as inspiration. And people have actually used it to propose. A few people actually. So this is Matthew and Tracy. And Tracy's like a huge Zen Pencils fan, and she loves this comic in particular. And yeah, so her boyfriend at the time, Matthew, he decided to like reenact the comic for her. Unfortunately, she said no, though. I'm just kidding. She said yes. And yeah, they're still married today. I'm pretty sure they are anyway. And yeah, some people have actually got the characters tattooed on their body, which is very flattering and crazy. I mean, I don't think my artwork's that great that I would tattoo it on myself. And yeah, some of the feedback that I really enjoy getting is when like my creativity has like inspired other people to use their creativity and to actually make stuff of their own. And this comic has been turned into a few short films. And so yeah, the top image is a small production company in Switzerland. They're actually making that now into a short film. And it's been made into a few fan films as well, as you can see there. So yeah, that's just another like example of how my creativity is helping others. But yeah, the thing I'm probably most proud of now is that the comics are being used in schools. And I get feedback from a lot of teachers, primary school teachers, high school teachers, and university teachers who actually use the comics as like teaching aids. And they've found that comics really, like kids really engage with comics, funnily enough. And yeah, so they kind of use them to teach them about important life lessons. And they get them to draw their own comics based on their own favorite quotes. And a lot of university English professors use my poetry adaptations in their poetry classes. So, you know, it's, again, another thing I was not expecting to happen. So this behind me is B. She's from the UK, and she's like a huge Zen Pencils fan. And she actually loves to write her own quotes now, and she's become a bit of a writer herself. And she kind of fills her wall with like her own quotes at home. She's got a very forgiving mum, because my mum would have killed me if I wrote on the walls like that. And yeah, it's just been really amazing. Seeing the books like above is a school in Mumbai. My books are part of their syllabus now. And below that, that's a classroom in Myanmar or Burma. And those are my posters hanging up in their classroom. And that one's special to me because my family's from Burma. If you're keeping up the news, like the Myanmar government is pretty horrible. And yeah, as a result, the students there don't have any curiosity. So kind of just going back to that theme, the teacher told me that the kids don't question anything. He actually said their curiosity is dead. They don't actually question the world around them. They just kind of just say yes to everything, and they think learning is just kind of memorizing facts from a book. So that really means a lot. He's trying to kind of awaken a sense of curiosity in the students, and just to kind of bring it full circle, that's kind of my poster there hanging up in their classroom. So yeah, that's just a few examples of what's happened with Zen Pencils. And yeah, I'm not kind of just telling you all this just to like brag or anything like that, but I just want you to know that all of this stuff was possible only after I asked myself those two questions, you know, is this what I'm meant to be doing, and how can I use my creativity to help others? And, you know, it's not just by answering those things, there's been a lot of hard work that's gone into it, and I work way harder than I used to work in my previous life, but, you know, it's work that I really enjoy, and it kind of fulfills me, and, you know, I get to work from home, and I don't have a stupid boss telling me what to do anymore. And yeah, it's kind of given me like a sense of purpose that I didn't used to have. And it's kind of changed my life for the better. And most importantly, I think, is that when I ask myself, you know, is this what I'm meant to be doing? I can answer with a yes. I know that I'm meant to be drawing comics that help people. And that's a pretty good feeling to have. And I just hope that you can also have that feeling. So, you know, you don't have to do anything drastic like I did and like make a huge career change or anything like that. You can just kind of start something on the side, or maybe just take a few small steps to get onto the right path for you. And, you know, if you can answer yes to that, then that's awesome. You're already like winning at life. But maybe just kind of ask yourself that every few years, because it can change over time. And yeah, just kind of always maintain that sense of curiosity and to see, you know, what you're capable of and, you know, what you want to achieve with your work. So yeah, that's just a bit about me and Zen Pencils. And before I go, I'll just kind of plug myself as if I haven't done that enough already. So if you're kind of interested in reading these comics I've told you about, I recommend you go to zenpencils.com/new readers. That's kind of a good place for you to start. It's got my most popular comics, and I'm on social media at Zen Pencils, obviously. And lastly, I've got a new book out. I think it's fitting being here at Creative Mornings. It's called Creative Struggle. And yeah, what I've done the past year is just kind of focus on quotes about creativity. And I've taken like quotes from the greatest artists in the world or in history, and I've kind of adapted them into comics. And yeah, it's just all about overcoming your own like creative struggle, and to let you know that even like the greatest have kind of struggled with the same crap that we deal with about our own work, about self-doubt and anxiety. And so yeah, if you're interested in that, I recommend, it's all on my website, all the information, and I think that's about it from me. I hope you got something out of it. I hope I didn't put you back to sleep. And thanks so much. I'm happy to take some questions, and I've got a few posters that I'm happy to give to you too. So thank you so much. Thank you.